A hot February morning in the Persian Gulf, the people of Abu Dhabi celebrate the great Muslim festival of the pilgrimage. In front of the crowd, surrounded by his bodyguard, is the ruler, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan. Zayed's the leader of no more than 50,000 people, but he's one of the richest men in the world. At the moment, these people are protected by Britain, who also runs the sheikhdoms' foreign policy. Next year, however, Britain's pulling out, and the inhabitants of Abu Dhabi will be on their own. Abu Dhabi is one of 9 sheikhdoms strung along the Trucial Coast, once called the Pirate Coast, which came under British control in the 19th century. Tucked away on the northern lip of Arabia, the Trucial states knew little of what went on in the outside world. Economic activity was confined to the coastal districts. The vast and trackless wastes of the interior did something for the soul, perhaps, but nothing for the pocket. About 10 years ago, things began to change. Oil has transformed the whole area, from Kuwait in the west to Oman at the eastern tip of the peninsula. And in Abu Dhabi, as in other parts of the Gulf, the oil flares that now light up the desert sky are glowing symbols of future prosperity. Oil was first discovered in Abu Dhabi in 1960, and the major oil companies moved in, correctly anticipating a bonanza. Production began in 1962, and Abu Dhabi's oil fields, both inland and offshore, now earn Sheikh Zayed something like £100 million a year, and the amount is rising yearly with comforting regularity. Only a few months ago, 2 new oil strikes were reported, and one of them by a Japanese company working on an offshore rig is said to have been of major importance. The sudden and spectacular wealth created by oil has brought its own problems, of course, and the man who will have to face them is Sheikh Zayed. For the moment, at least, Zayed can be confident about one thing, his authority. He still lives in undisguised splendor and is accepted by everyone as sole ruler of the country. He's expected, however, to be generous with both his money and his time, and to carry out the traditional role of the sheikh by making himself constantly available to settle individual complaints and disputes. Zayed holds court here in the reception room of his town palace. Kinfolk and foreigners, shrewd oil men and even shrewder tribesmen come before the sheikh to plead a favor or angle for a contract, or just simply to ensure that their face doesn't get forgotten by the people who matter. Zayed's been in power since 1966, when he ousted his brother, the miserly and conservative Sheikh Shakhbut. It's no secret that Shakhbut's departure was greeted with a sigh of relief, not only by the local population, but also by the British, who'd long been trying to persuade him to spend some of the rising tide of oil wealth on his own people. Shakbat had a chronic mistrust of anything that smelt of progress, and British officials feared that his unwillingness to lead his country into the 20th century would sooner or later end in disaster. Britain backed Zayed and has so far not regretted it. The power behind the throne in Abu Dhabi, as in other Gulf sheikhdoms, is still the British resident, who is personally responsible for decisions affecting defence and foreign policy. The big question now is what will happen after the British withdrawal next year. Britain's been urging the sheikhdoms to band together in a federation of trucial states, but although the scheme has gone far enough for Zayed to be elected the first federal president, no constitution has yet been agreed on. Failure to unify could be fatal, for the sheikhs have many enemies. To the south, for example, is Saudi Arabia, which has a claim on approximately half Abu Dhabi's territory, and to the north is Iran, which claims oil-rich Bahrain. Elsewhere, as in Iraq and South Yemen, the tide of revolutionary socialism runs strong. For many years, Britain's military presence in the area centred around the Trucial Oman Scouts, a British officered force which still operates from its rather improbable headquarters in a mud fort set in the heart of the desert. This was the force which 15 years ago prevented the Saudis from staking their claim to the Buraimi oasis. The Scouts are now about 1,500 strong, most of them recruited locally. They've been very successful as the policemen of the coast, and Britain hoped that they would form the nucleus of a federal defence force. Unfortunately, the mutual suspicion which has traditionally existed between the sheikhs is still too strong for the sort of cooperation that a common defence force would demand. The Scouts are no longer the only army on the coast, and their current role, like their future, is unclear. Next to oil, Abu Dhabi's most precious possession is water, and most of that comes from the Buraimi oasis 100 miles inland from Abu Dhabi town. Zayed was an active administrator here in the days before he deposed his brother, and it was largely due to his efforts that the capital was provided with fresh water. Zayed also used the water for irrigation, and he used his own share of the oil revenues to back experimental farms in the area. It was Saudi Arabia's threat to the Buraimi oasis that gave Sheikh Zayed an excuse to form his own private army. On coming to power, he decided to set up the Abu Dhabi Defence Force against the wishes of the British government, who thought it would encourage the other sheikdoms to follow suit and so frustrate the unity it believed to be essential for the region's future security. Over the last 4 years, Abu Dhabi has built up a considerable military force, and it's still getting stronger. It now has an army of 4,000 men, commanded by 150 British officers, most of them on contract as mercenaries. 50 armoured cars, Saladins and Ferrets, have been bought from Britain, and by this summer they'll have the benefit of air support from 12 British Hawker Hunter jet fighters. By most standards, of course, it's only a tiny army, but it should be remembered that until relatively recently, the sheikhs were apt to settle their disputes by sending bands of Bedouin tribesmen to fight it out on camels. Today, Abu Dhabi is by far the most powerful sheikhdom on the Trucial Coast. Many of the smaller states resent the size of Abu Dhabi's force and say it's just as big a threat to them as it is to any outside power. Sea power is important too, because much of the oil is extracted from under the sea bed. The main naval threat is thought to come from the Iranians on the other side of the Gulf. They've recently expanded their navy, and some of the sheikhs believe they're determined to show that this is still very much the Persian Gulf. Sheikh Zayed has so far bought 9 of these Vosper fast patrol boats. They're commanded by British and Pakistani officers.
Okay. إلى سلة إلى سلة إلى سلة.
Britain has tried to dissuade others from following Sheikh Zayed's example, but without much success. Abu Dhabi's neighbour, Qatar, is also developing its own navy and has even bought some British anti-aircraft missiles. One danger which many observers see in these private forces is that they may in future become a threat to their own masters, as happened in Libya last summer when King Idris was deposed by a left-wing military coup. But for the moment, the sheikhs feel secure enough, feeling that in the present state of political development along the coast, it will be a long time before there's any active opposition to their rule. Zayed at least believes he's guarding against such developments by spending a large share of his oil wealth on raising his people's living standards. This new dual carriageway linking the Buraimi oasis with Abu Dhabi town is just one aspect of an ambitious development program that will provide the country with the basic infrastructure of a modern state. Sheikh Zayed's plan calls for the spending of nearly £300 million in the next 5 years on low-cost housing projects, light industry, hospitals, schools and street lighting. A new port with a deep-water harbour is under construction so that larger ships will no longer have to unload their cargoes at sea and have them ferried inshore by smaller craft. With more money available every year from the soaring oil revenues, Abu Dhabi has taken on all the characteristics of a gold rush town of the last century. On every side, new buildings are going up with incredible speed on plots that were just flat expanses of desert a few years ago. International companies, engineers and businessmen are rushing here from all over the world to get in on the boom. As Abu Dhabi's starting almost from scratch, it's a developer's dream, a speculator's paradise. The only factor that limits Abu Dhabi's growth is a chronic shortage of labour. Unemployment is a thing of the past, and demand for labour is now so intense that thousands of illegal immigrants are officially ignored by the authorities so long as they come to work in the construction trades. Many of them are Pakistanis, but others come from all over the Middle East, and Sheikh Zayed himself arranged for over 1,000 Palestinians to come and work in Abu Dhabi. Oil wealth has transformed the face of Abu Dhabi in little more than 5 years, but it will be considerably longer before a similar change comes about in the attitudes and customs of the people. The camel races at the annual festival of the pilgrimage are a case in point. Every year they're keenly attended by thousands of tribesmen out for a good day's sport. Lining the track, a sea of men's faces, not a woman in sight. The sheikh himself has none of his 4 wives with him. Even at festival time, strict Muslim control keeps women behind closed doors. In Arabia, they say you can tell a man by his camel, and if his camel wins one of these races, he can virtually live off the prestige for the rest of the year. It's an expensive sport. A good racing camel can put you back 800 pounds, even if it won't need anything to drink for 10 days on end. The winners are brought before the sheikh, who then decides how much prize money they'll receive. The money comes out of his own pocket. First prize is usually about 200 pounds, but with an income of 100 million pounds, he can afford it. Later in the day, Sheikh Zayed takes to the dance floor in the main square of Abu Dhabi. Like all the Gulf rulers, he's of Bedouin stock, and it's traditional for Bedouin singers and dancers to celebrate the festival in this way. In these parts, nearly everyone carries a gun or a knife, and weapons play an important role in the dance, too. The songs are all of desert warriors and beautiful women, and maybe some now sing of the black gold that gushes up from beneath the desert sands and makes their leaders rich and generous. Young girls sway about in the dance in one of their few moments of freedom before they grow up to spend their womanhood hidden from public view behind the heavy veils of purdah. The people of Abu Dhabi and the other Trucial states have now to make adjustments in their traditional way of life at a speed that many of them must find baffling. In the short space of a generation, their country has moved from the 14th to the 20th century. Their new circumstances, their wealth, and their country's strategic importance in an unstable part of the world means that age-old attitudes will have to be discarded. By the time these children are grown up, the veils will probably have disappeared. For whether the people of Abu Dhabi like it or not, their world is changing fast, and their future lies in keeping pace with it.